Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Presidential Address for Week 2. Like last week, we are splitting the NFL Presidential Address up into 3 different videos. This is part 1, and we'll be looking at the Minnesota-Philadelphia Thursday night football game, Green Bay versus Atlanta, Baltimore and Cincinnati, and the Seattle-Detroit Lions game. Stay with us all the way through, and make sure to watch part 2 and part 3. Let's get straight. Well, before we get into it, I just want to mention last week I gave out 13 picks across the board on all 3 of these videos. My record last week was 8-5 if you bet every play across the board. We'll get into my client record and some promos for you later on during the show. Let's get straight into the Thursday night football game. Minnesota now +7 against Philadelphia, a total of 48.5. And let me just start by saying this. Minnesota pooched the hooch last week, period. Tampa Bay did not look good. Minnesota did everything in their power to lose their bettors' money and to piss off their fan base. We had them. We had Minnesota in a money line 2-team parlay with Washington. I gave that to my clients, and obviously it lost. Well, it happens, but it pissed me off. As for the Eagles, I didn't touch that game last week for my clients. I did mention take under the total of 45.5, and it cashed by half a point. And the Eagles, man, look, tale of two halves. They go up 16-0 against the Patriots, and then they basically get stymied, only 9 more points in the last 3 quarters of the game, and they let the Patriots move the ball all over them. When I look at this particular game, I have to bet the over. Both defenses were underwhelming in the first week, and both offenses, minus turnovers, were able to move the ball up and down the field. Minnesota put up close to 400 yards of offense up last week, and they averaged 6 yards a play. With Kirk Cousins running the play action and Justin Jefferson stretching the field, I believe this mini team will be an over team most of the year. Plus, on top of that, they have a pretty mediocre defense at best and barely any pass rush. We do know that Philly can keep up with anybody score-wise, and although they only put up 251 yards last game against New England, they can score quick and they can score in bunches. Their starters barely played the entire preseason, and it looked that way. They were totally out of rhythm, and I think we're going to see them get back to their dynamic offense this week. Their biggest problem last week was the red zone and their O-line. Their O-line was terrible, but stopping sacks and pressure against the inept Minnesota D-line should not be as big a concern this week as it was last. I think we see a 31-24 type game here, which gives us almost a TD more than the current total. Take Minnesota and Philadelphia over 48.5. Before we get into the Green Bay Atlanta game, I just want to make mention, I did not have a great week last week for my clients. Although I went 8-5 across the board and I went 4-1 in the circa, I ended up going 5-9 for my clients. I lost about 10 units, 12 units of action, mostly prop bets that just didn't go right for me. I needed 45 yards from Sam Howell in the second half, passing-wise, couldn't get it. I needed the under in Green Bay, bad decision. I needed 6 more rush yards from Anthony Richardson, he got hurt. I needed 1 interception from Aaron Rodgers. We'll never find out if that's going to happen or not. It was just one of those weeks. And in college football, I had the toughest beat I've had in a long, long time. I was on Texas Tech plus 6.5. They were up by 2 with 1:15 in the game. The reason I'm mentioning all of this is that I believe you got to buy low. I had a monster college football season last year. I've had 17 out of 20 winning NFL seasons. I had a winning regular season last year as well. This is the time to be playing me, guys, and I have a promo for you all. It is Prez 3, Prez 3. You get 3-day all access for only $49. That is a bargain, and I'm going to have a big week. Let's move on. Green Bay -1 versus Atlanta, total of 40.5 here. And we bet the under in Green Bay in week 1 and lost, but that game was 10-6, 10-6 at half. And then the Bears did their thing and let the Pack put up 28 on them. The Pack are not a team that will put up 38 points very often. Quite frankly, I don't think they'll put 38 points up again this season. This is a team that will run, slow the clock down to a crawl. This is a team that will put together 7-minute drives that end in more field goals than touchdowns. And this is a team that has a really, really good defense. If you were a client of mine or listen to the show, you know I liked the under in Atlanta last week. And although I didn't release it, I did mention that I was personally betting 2% on that under, and it hit. Now we have 40.5 on board. And again, I think this is just too many points. The Falcons put up a grand total of 221 total yards last week. 26 worst in the league. And they pulled a Justin Fields, barely getting 100 yards in the air. I think we see both these teams play to the under all year, and I think if Green Bay didn't have that second half against the Bears, this number would have been 38. The only way the Falcons win this game is to put together long, time-killing drives. We see them struggle in the red zone on Sunday and all year long. I do like Green Bay here, and it is a lean for me, and it might make my circuit card, but the better bet is under. I'm not going to get enamored by what Green Bay did last week, and I think we see a 20-17 type football game. Take Green Bay and Atlanta under the total of 40.5. Next up is Baltimore plus 3.5 for Cincinnati, a total here of 46.5. How bad were the Bengals last week against Cleveland? So bad that I can't decide if they will get it together this week or not. Outside of the lack of reps from Burrow in the preseason and the fact that the offense had absolutely no rhythm, their biggest issue, period, is their offensive line. And I think it might haunt them all year long. How good is Baltimore? I don't think they're some juggernaut. We simply don't know. They played Houston last week and they allowed the Texans close to 300 yards of offense. Not only that, but Lamar Jackson, from a throwing perspective, did not look great. What I do know is that this division will see a lot of very close games. And anytime I can get a dog over a field goal, I'm going to jump at the chance. Can Baltimore go into Cincinnati and win this game? I think they can. They are absolutely loaded on offense and have opened that offense up this year. Zay looked incredible, just for the record. I think you could throw all the numbers from last week out the window for both teams. Here we have a newly revamped Baltimore team who lost both games to Cincy last year, primed and ready to attack. I just can't seem to get away from the Ravens in this spot. Take Baltimore plus 3.5. Now we turn our attention to Seattle plus 6. I think it's now 5 against Detroit with a total that has dropped down to 48.5. Just like the Baltimore-Cincy game, how good is Detroit? How bad is Seattle? My take is simple. Detroit is that good. Their D looks for real. While Seattle, although not as bad as they showed in the second half against the Rams, they're a mediocre football team with a terrible secondary. What is interesting to me here is that both offenses sputtered in week 1, and we expected both to be highly efficient and effective. We are going to look to play the over in this game, and lucky for us, the number has been bet down from 51 to 40 and 48.5. First off, both these teams are deep passing teams. St. Brown and Metcalf will have big plays, and both should get over 100 yards of receiving. This game is going to be played on carpet, and it should help with the speed of these dynamic wide receivers. We saw last year that Detroit can sputter on offense at times, but also have the capacity to put up 40-plus points themselves in a game. If the Rams can move the ball on Seattle, the Lions should eat them alive. As for the Seattle offense, let's not overthink this and just assume they will be as bad as they were in the second half of week 1. This is a high-profile offense with weapons up and down the field. I would not be surprised if we see a 34-27 game. I do lean on the Lions here, but I like the over the best. That's it for the show. Make sure to watch part 2. It'll be up tomorrow.